Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June 18th Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk today will be Ms. Nicolina Verkar. We also have attending electronically Councillor Gesselbrock. Not seeing anyone else. Today's Finance and Audit Committee meeting is being held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. If during the meeting any member of the gallery, and we don't appear to have anyone yet, has a question on a matter that is considered by the committee, please sign up on the sheet located on the table by the double doors to my left. Please note the Council Procedure Bylaw states questions will only be taken on staff reports or other business items. Before I get into the agenda, I'm sad to report that I had a call this morning from Bill Merrilee's spouse, to advise me that Bill passed away this morning at 1:30. He was a remarkable British Columbian. He is, without doubt, without question, one of the leading experts in the flora and fauna of this province. Gave a massive collection into the public domain several years ago. Author of many books, defender of Saskatchewan and butter tubs and various other causes. So I regret passing on the news in this way, but I felt it more appropriate rather than try and tell each of you individually that I would announce it in this public way. I expect a celebration of life sometime in July. His family was with him at the end, and this community has lost a citizen who took that citizenship to heart and carried it out every day of his working life and into his retirement. Ms. Verkar, the first item is the introduction of late items. We have none. A motion for adoption of the agenda. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Perino. All those in favour? Any opposed? Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Eastmere, seconded Councillor Hemmons. All those in favour? Opposed? None. The first item is presentations, the 2026-2030 Financial Plan Development. Ms. Mercer and then Ms. Fulla. Welcome, both of you.
Test.
It's just like kindergarten, musical chairs to start.
Just musical chairs. So now that we have finished the 2025 to 2029 financial plan, just seems like 5 minutes ago, we're starting on the 2026 to 2030 financial plan. So Ms. Fulla is here to walk you through kind of an overview of the budget, budget timeline, and the process, as well as where we're starting. So in the current plan, we're year 2, and that's where we're starting. So she'll walk you through where our starting spot is. And then once we're done, we can have discussion on what you would like to see out of the budget this year.
Good morning. As Ms. Mercer mentioned, preparation is underway on the 2026 to 2030 financial plan. Today I'm going to provide a bit of an overview of the proposed timeline, as well as review where we are starting this budget cycle. At the end of the presentation, staff will be looking to the committee for directions on your expectations for the draft budget. Now let's hope the clicker works. In February, staff began updating 10-year project plans, and last month at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, staff presented on the development of the draft project plan and asked for direction from the committee. Today, staff is seeking direction on the budget as work begins on updating our business plans, developing draft operating budgets, and preparing business cases in preparation for budget deliberations this fall. The goal is to have first 3 readings of the 2026-2030 financial plan, or what we call the provisional budget, passed by the end of this December. Under the proposed timeline, the adoption of the provisional budget would occur in early January. Between January and April, staff will update the budget as new information is received, as well as directives we receive from Council. In April, we'll present the proposed final budget with final adoption before that May 15th deadline. Based on the current financial plan, the projected starting point for the 2026 property tax increase is 7.7%, which does include 1% for the general asset management reserve. On a later slide, I will provide a high-level overview of some of those preliminary budget drivers. The projected future rates reflect the fact that the debt for the VICC, so the Vancouver Island Conference Centre, will be ending in 2026 and 2027, as well as the ending of the 5-year funding commitment Council previously made for the Nanaimo Systems Planning Organization. The current projected user rate increases are 4% for sewer, which does include a 2% increase for the asset management reserve, 5% for water, which also includes a 2% increase for the asset management reserve, and 1.7% for sanitation. In 2025, we do have some of our short-term debt related to the purchase of refuse trucks paying out, so debt servicing costs will go down in 2026. Of course, all rates will be reviewed and revised if necessary once the draft budgets are developed. In the 2021 census, Nanaimo was named as one of the country's 5 fastest growing regions. In the past several years, the city has invested in additional resources for public safety. This includes new firefighters, RCMP members, as well as community safety officers. We've also seen higher than normal inflationary increases. The 5-year average property tax increase for 2021 to 2025 is 6.3%. Looking at our six-figure budget drivers that make up the current projected 7.7%, on the expenditure side, we have 911 services. In 2025, we used $60,000 from our 911 reserve to help fund fire dispatch services. 2026 currently has no reserve funding allocated to fund dispatch services. We have asset management. The annual 1% increase to property taxes was approved as part of the recommendations from our 20-year investment plan that we presented in 2023, and this is to help address the city's infrastructure funding gap. We have the election. In 2026, we have budget to hold a municipal election, as well as funding for related expenses associated with a new council. We have grants. The largest drivers of this increase include it'll be the first full year of grant funding in support of the lease for 1298 Nelson Street, so that's the former Travelers Lodge, as well as increases to our cultural, operating, and events grants. We have IT software and subscriptions. This will include our new Enterprise Resource Planning Software, Unit 4, the impact of Microsoft licenses, as well as the impact of our GIS software moving to a new billing category due to population. We do anticipate these numbers will change as 2026 draft budgets are refined. Next, we have project funding. Base funding for projects increases 5% as per our 20-year investment plan. This helps address growth in assets as well as inflation. Plus, we have the impact of a one-time funding reduction that you made in 2025. In 2025, there was a one-time reduction in base funding of approximately $795,000 as a result of moving phase 2 of the Commercial Street implementation outside of the 5-year plan. 2026 base funding is based on a 5% increase to 2025 base funding prior to that one-time reduction. Next up, we have the RCMP contract, and this is made up of actually several different components. We will have the first full year of the 4 members that were added in 2025, but we didn't budget them to start till the end of this year. We will also have the first full year of the new public service employee that was added. And then, of course, in April of 2026, we'll be adding 4 more additional new members. It also includes contract cost increase. And finally, 2026 has a contract budgeted at 95%. And for 2025, you'll remember you reduced that to 92%. So 2 additional items I'd like to mention when we talk about the RCMP contract is for the 2026 budget, there will be a decision slide during budget deliberations where you can choose the percentage that you wish to budget the contract at. As well, we have received updated projections from eDivision, and costs for 2026 are higher than previously presented to the staff. And finally, on the expense side, we have wages and benefits. And we've broken this into 2 lines. We have a contingency for vacancies. So in 2025, we did a negative contingency for 2025 only to address vacancies, because as you know, we do have challenges in hiring staff, so this helps reduce the surplus. We will provide a slide during budget deliberations in the fall for council to consider a negative contingency for 2026. Our second line is wage and benefit changes and new positions. Before I go into some details, I would like to provide a bit of context. As you know, the city provides services, and to provide those services takes people. The 2026 budget includes funding for 758 FTEs plus temporary, casual, and contract employees who are all providing those services to the community. So on this line, it includes contingency for contract increases as the IAFF contract expired at the end of last year, and the QP contract will expire at the end of this year. Of course, we will be reviewing these estimates for the new contracts as part of budget preparations. It includes 4 new CSO officers that will be starting next April, as well as 2 new positions in police services, one starting in January and one starting in April. It reflects progression along the pay scale of the 40 new firefighters. So we had those 20 new firefighters we started in August of 2023, and we have the 20 firefighters that started at the beginning of this year. It also includes a full year for 11 and a half other positions that were added in 2025. And finally, it includes an estimate for changes to benefit costs.
If I may interrupt, with respect to the firefighters, given the new hirings, are we expecting some reduction in overtime cost, I trust and hope, as part of the budget process, or?
Sorry, Your Worship, I would have to follow up with the chief and get back to you with a better answer. I don't feel comfortable responding this morning.
Thank you.
On the revenue side, we are budgeting for a decrease in investment income. Staff will be reviewing income investment projections for the draft budget based on current interest rates as well as forecasted rates for 2026. So likely this number will change some, but at this point it's hard to say if it would go up or down. We also have a $100,000 decrease in the reserve funding, as 2025 is the last year of funding from reserves to lower property taxes as we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Then we have other changes. So these are the budget drivers that are less than 6 figures, and they total an increase of $337,000. And finally, the projected impact of growth less supplements is $1.2 million. We are using a conservative number of $1.2 million for growth, and of course we will update this to the actual final number in April of next year, and supplements will be reflected as we receive them. The net changes are an increase to the budget of $12.6 million, or a 7.7% property tax increase. At December 31st, the city had outstanding external debt of $33.9 million. This includes Fire Station number 4 and the Vancouver Island Conference Centre, which their debt servicing is funded by property taxes. We have Fire Station number 1, which is funded by the General Asset Management Reserve, sanitation debt, which is funded by sanitation user fees, and then finally the water treatment plant, which is funded by water user fees. We also have 2 internal borrowings related to sewer DCC projects, for which the debt servicing is currently being funded by sewer operations, as we have insufficient funding in the sewer DCC reserve to repay the debt as well as undertake needed sewer DCC projects. The current financial plan includes 2 new borrowings. We have an internal borrowing this year for DCC SS44, Hammond Bay and Turner area, and we have an external borrowing for the Wilcox Secondary Access Project. This borrowing, of course, will be subject to both council and electoral approval. Debt servicing is currently budgeted to be funded from the General Asset Management Reserve, so there would be no impact to property taxes of this borrowing. As planning on this project proceeds and timing is refined, staff will continue to explore other funding options for this project. The following slide shows the projected outstanding debt over the next 5 years. How much the city can borrow is governed by our liability servicing limit, which is 25% of our controllable and sustainable revenues for the year. At December 31st, our limit was $57.8 million for annual principal and interest payments, and we were at 13.1% of that limit. Our liability servicing limit will be revised in the fall once the province has reviewed and approved the financial information we have submitted for 2024. So next steps. In developing the draft budget, staff will look to supporting the integrated action plan, council strategic framework, and maintaining current level of service. The budget will target a 7.7% tax increase as per the approved 2025 to 2029 financial plan. As per direction from the committee, a decision point for a phased increase to the annual road maintenance budget will be included during fall budget deliberations, as well as I mentioned a slide for the RCMP contract and a slide to consider a negative wage contingency for variances. So at this time, we want to turn the discussion over to the committee for any direction that you wish to provide staff or any questions you might have on the budget.
Thank you very much. As you say, one task finished and you're already into the next year. It is what it is. Councillor Perino, please.
You're right, it is what it is, that's for sure. Thank you, Your Worship. If we could just go back to under new debt, sorry. And it's talking about the external borrowing of the Wilcox secondary access. I'm just wondering, can you just explain that one just a little bit for me? So we have to do external borrowing for that?
Councillor Perino, at this point, when we were balancing the financial plan for 2025 to 2029, because of the scope of the project, the only way to ensure that we could keep in the plan other projects that staff felt were a priority was to use external borrowing. And when we looked at the projects, this is the one that seemed best to suit external borrowing.
Okay, and there won't be any DCCs for that. The only DCCs that we're looking at would be for the Hammond Bay and Turner area projects.
Through the chair to Councillor Perino, correct. The Wilcox secondary access is not on our DCC project list,
okay.
Whereas the Hammond Bay project is.
Yeah, we can use it. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I realize that I'm not seeing any other council members with their hands up yet. In terms of land acquisitions, potentially in the next few years, and there's a number of things that people are concerned about and we're asked to purchase, et cetera, that would have a reasonably significant impact on our budget in terms of tax increases over time, or do we have, how much money do we have kicking around for property acquisitions? And by property acquisitions, I mean things that would be added to, basically to public spaces, not necessarily for, well, a works yard or something like that. I mean, we have a works yard, but those kinds of acquisitions. You can just comment in a general sort of way, as after all, we are preparing the public during this open discussion.
Yep. So when it comes to property acquisition, we do budget annually. It's just over, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it's just over 600,000. We do budget each year. That is for land opportunities that come up during the year. If a specific capital project, we know that there's land acquisition associated with it, we do budget for that land purchase. And then generally we allocate a portion of surplus to one of our property reserves so that you have some flexibility to also respond to purchase opportunities that come up, because of course 600,000 doesn't go very far nowadays with land values.
The 13.1% that we're at as of December 31st, 2023, in the last year, probably not a significant change to that percentage or number. Is that fair to say? As we don't have a figure for 2024 yet, so.
Through the chair to the chair, sorry. As our controllable revenues go up, of course, that percentage is, then we can have higher debt servicing costs, and our debt hasn't been increasing. We've had some short-term borrowing for the refuse trucks. That was 5-year borrowing, so that's starting to pay out. We also had some debt payout recently related to when we first automated. So it's been pretty stable. It hasn't changed a lot at this point.
Any other members of council? Too early in the process. The shopping lists aren't prepared yet, but I'm sure we'll get around to it. Thank you very much, both of you. Much appreciated. Yes? Sorry, Councillor Gesselbrock. You're just a little figure on the screen this morning.
Yeah, no worries. You know, it was brought up last finance and audit, I think, when the capital plans were put forth. And I don't believe it's a large item, but I believe there is and already, you know, they've completed a section of gravel pathway along the ENN trail, the rail line. And I think there is opportunity to extend that with the Island Corridor Foundation. I believe we did a section already that connected, you know, two large for very cheaply. I think it was like $50,000. And there's the ability to go further into the city center and then maybe out to 7th Street and finish off sort of the south end connection. I think it was initially estimated at like $8 million if we were going to do a full pavement, but there's a way to do it with, you know, as a fraction of the cost, and so it'd be interesting. I know they were looking for direction last time on the capital projects to get a costing and provide information to include that in the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock. Anyone else? All right. Thank you again very much. Much appreciated. We have no delegations. In terms of reports, the next is allocation of unallocated pedestrian funds. Mr. Sims, please.
Thanks, Your Worship.
This will be a much longer discussion as the sum is much smaller than the total budget.
Well, please refer to the definition of bike shedding. So I'm delighted to find that my mic is working again. And so this is our annual discussion on your budget for pedestrian projects that may come up during the year. And as has been our habit, staff have put together a list based on the pedestrian sort of scoring tool that you're aware of. And I'd also like to note that before Mr. Rose jumps into his presentation, that this year staff met with the Advisory Committee on Accessibility and Inclusion and the Public Safety Committee just to, review the process and review the projects with them. So they've also provided some feedback. Pass it over to Mr. Rose. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. Mr. Rose, good morning. Welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here today. This is a fairly concise presentation, but just a bit of a recap. The pedestrian unallocated program has been going on since 2018, and I think it's been one of the most effective programs we've got to improve pedestrian mobility around the city. And as Mr. Sims said, we've had this discussion with the Accessibility Committee and the Public Safety Committee, both of which generated some good conversation. The Accessibility Committee actually identified a new social service in the Woodgrove area that we weren't aware of, but dovetailed nicely with the Applecross recommendation. And the Public Safety Committee did raise some discussions around some of the secondary projects, but we have before you the recommendation for the 3 locations, town site at St. Patrick's, Wallace at Franklin, and Portsmouth at Applecross. All 3 of these locations are being recommended to have improvements by way of a raised crosswalk. We are finding more and more that not only do these create better pedestrian crossing opportunities, but have the secondary benefit of managing speed along each of the corridors. And so this is our, as I said, this is our recommendation. It is supported by the pedestrian model that we generated or produced in concert with council a few years ago. And I can go through. This is a bit of a landscape across the city of where these locations are. In a previous presentation, we have shown the majority of the projects that have been done over the last 7 years, and it's quite impressive to see how much we've added to the community. Town site at St. Patrick's, it's a fairly wide crossing. Speed is a known concern along the corridor. There's also some cycling infrastructure and connectivity along the Boundary Bush bikeway. One of the questions that was raised by the Accessibility Committee here was actually if there's any potential benefits to the crosswalk across Bush. And I think that the short answer is yes. The long answer is they are indirect. And so we can kind of explore a little further details as we go through the design phase, but fundamentally this is to improve the connectivity across town site. The Wallace Street intersection just outside City Hall here. We are proposing to add a second crosswalk and to be raised, so to further reinforce the 30-kilometer-hour speed limit on Wallace Street, providing greater connectivity into the downtown core, down to Victoria Crescent and the upcoming transit exchange, and crisscrossing over to Bastion to get down over the bridge into downtown as well. And so it may appear somewhat redundant, but there are desire lines on both links, and adding the raised crosswalk really does help improve sort of mobility performance along this corridor. The last one is the Applecross and McRobb crossing. This is had a number of supporting factors through the model, but it was actually a hot topic during the Woodgrove Area Plan open house, and was raised by a number of residents as being an area that they had some concern. And so I think that kind of highlights that the homework we did in developing the model does in fact track with what the community is looking for, and where there's support for investments. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and yeah, go from there.
Thank you very much. In order, Councillors Perino, Eastmere, and Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Mr. Rose. So we were given the previous year project update, and it says following the table showing the pedestrian unallocated projects approved since 2023. So the status that we're seeing on those, is that current?
That would have been current as of the drafting of the report. Some of those may have advanced a little bit since then, but otherwise, yes, that would be correct.
Okay. My concern is the only two that have actually been, I lied, 3 that have been completed. There's only 3 on the whole list. All the rest are either in design or under construction. And it shocks me how, and I apologize for saying it this way, but how far behind we are. And now we're going to add 3 more to the list, and they're needed. So I was very pleased to see them. But just for example, we're looking at, today we're looking at the Portsmouth Road at Applecross, desperately needed. I've used that area a lot. And yet we haven't done the Dover Road at Applecross Road. It's still in the design. So I guess what I'm saying, so it's a twofold. I realize that we're so overworked and, over budget and everything. So I'm just asking the question, with so much still to do, we're adding 3 more. When are we going to complete those? Any thoughts on that? Or I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just.
Your Worship, if I can jump in here, it's a great question, and we've had the discussion before, maybe several months ago, around the generality of project cycles. So if we dream up a project today, or if we insert a project today into the budget,
exactly,
that starts the cycle of first we scope, design, construct, and there's oftentimes we'll have external resources that help support. So a design consultant, an engineering consultant to to help do that. So there's time involved. So a typical project cycle from idea going off to completion is typically in the 2-year range.
It is, okay.
So we're in, it's just, you know, the projects that are in the report before you were approved a couple of years ago, and this is a natural project cycle. It's not that, you know, I guess in one way you could define that as being behind, but it's, you know,
Yes,
we're using this year's money, but we're building it in 2 years from now, as an example.
Okay, so, and that's helpful. I appreciate hearing that, because I'm not trying to place blame, but I'm just concerned that we're now adding yet another 3. And especially, as I say, I look at that Dover Road at Applecross, and I'm like, when are we even going to get that done before we have to do this next one? So you're saying within a 2-year you can get it done? No pressure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It's the 3rd time I've seen it because it went to the Accessibility and the Public Safety Committee, but I think that's really good because we did get some really positive feedback from the Accessibility Committee, and then the Public Safety Committee did have, some members did have some hesitations around the one on Wallace Street, noting that you're crossing to a section of Wallace where there isn't really anything on that other side of the road. And you did mention that it is sort of, it looks like doubling up because there is already a sidewalk or a crosswalk on the other side of that intersection. And so there was, you know, numerous suggestions about different places that a crosswalk might be better added in an area that has no crosswalks. And the committee decided not to make a specific recommendation on another location, just because acknowledging that we do have a tool that can help identify the next one down the list. But I feel it's important for me to pass on that there wasn't a whole lot of, let's say, excitement about putting a crosswalk in this location. And yeah, personally, I'd be very interested in maybe putting another crosswalk closer to a school. We hear a lot of concerns about about safe crossings near schools, and that the city works with SD68 and ICBC to identify some of those locations. So I'm good with the other 2, but this particular location doesn't really rank as a priority to my mind, and I'd be interested to hear what the rest of council thinks. Thank you.
Councillor Kesselbrock.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I had similar feelings about the Wallace crosswalk. It definitely is needed, but just in terms of prioritization, and I was thinking more around the crosswalk that was mentioned on Howard, or something around Fairview School. And my question first is just in terms of users, do we give? Is there in our ranking matrix, do we give points for proximity to elementary schools and you know, usage of children, and then also you know, interest, like in terms of people writing in about it?
Through the chair, so we definitely include point system for proximity to elementary schools, and so that was definitely accounted for in some of the locations that are discussed on 2nd and on Howard. We do not add comments or interest from the community as part of it. When we created the tool, it was really intended to create a database system that would give us a guideline to prioritize locations to then bring to the table, and then enable that discussion to say, you know, here's what the information's telling us, but these are attention directing. And so if there's a discussion, you know, if one location may have a greater deal of community interest or support, then we're open to having that conversation.
Okay, great, thanks. And then the question in terms of like the 2 locations, Is there one that was noted to be more important between the Elizabeth Street in Howard and the 2nd Street in Camp Place? I mean, the rating shows the Elizabeth Street at Howard Avenue, but just comment, like, I mean, should we be doing both of those at the same time? Or there would be an improvement if we just did one at this point in the game and then did another?
So I think that looking at the scores, there's kind of like a 3 or 4 point split between them, and I think that, you know, that's the tool's probably not that precise, and so one over the other is not monumentally different. I think that there would be some logic in doing both at the same time as something to sort of just globally support mobility around that school. But I mean, there's no reason to not do one without the other as well, so.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the report and presentation. Regarding Wallace Street, I had a similar reaction as Councillor Eastmere. I attended the safety meeting where it was discussed, but ultimately I think what persuaded me is the development in that neighborhood. So we've got the TELUS building coming in, we've got the Campbell Street development going in. So I'm okay with that, but I would entertain if someone wanted to debate it. To the list of what we've got in the queue, I actually find it really impressive, and I get that these things take time, and I imagine this is also a bit of a legacy of us increasing the budget, tripling it for, I think, 2 years we had it at $1 million, so of course we've got a bit of a queue. My question is, I have a couple. The first is, do things get built in the order that we say yes to, recognizing that they're tied to capital projects?
So through the chair, in general terms, I would say yes. However, because there is there was those years where there was a significant increase and there was a backlog, we have looked at ways to optimize our contracts. And so if we can cluster ones that are in a general area that with the intent or aspiration of finding some financial benefit, then we will do that. So we may pull a project forward a year or push one back a year to get that grouping. But in general terms, they do tend to come out in the chronology that they were approved.
Okay. And acknowledging that one of the pieces of information you use to identify these are upcoming capital projects, are any of the 3 that we're contemplating right now tied into a capital project?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rose, I wonder if, for not so much the benefit of council, but for the general public who are listening in the media, just explain that the school board, the city, the RCMP, ICBC discuss public safety issues on a regular basis and just how that process works.
Certainly, through the chair. So we do have standing meetings with all of those agencies, and that's an opportunity for us to not only discuss pressure points in the system, but means to address them. And so, you know, we've got sort of our 3 E's or 5 E's, depending on who's identifying them. But typically it's the engineering, enforcement, and education. And so, you know, some situations require enforcement. And so we can bring the RCMP into the table and they can do what they do best. Other times it's a situation where really the only thing that's going to address the concern or change the behavior is to change the road. And so this is where projects fall into this category. One of the things that we've been working on quite extensively with the school district over the last, and ICBC as well, over the last half dozen or so years, is through our active school travel plans. And so that creates the awareness of some of the concerning areas, but it also creates opportunities to share information and help educate students and parents and teachers on, you know, how to navigate through the community and you know, giving them the tools and the life skills to have those, to not necessarily need a sidewalk per se, but other ways to move safely.
And with respect to the crosswalk improvement prioritization tool, if you could explain that as well, that would be very helpful, I think.
Yeah, so prior to about 2020, staff had an internal tool or assessment process that we used that was very complicated and very precise and was very difficult to sort of explain and rationalize because it was so detailed. And so in an effort to create some better understanding and also to gather some feedback from the community, we undertook a process to review that tool and rebuild it and discuss what the priorities and what the needs are of the community to create a new tool. And so that was when we kind of streamlined it and really landed it on, core safety and mobility issues, tying it to pedestrian drivers like proximity to schools and transit, safety history, the collision trends at various locations. And so we were then able to ingest that into a GIS system that could automatically review each of the existing crosswalks across the city to give us this broad spectrum review and give us these attention directing numbers to make some determinations as to where we should be focusing our investments.
Thank you. So it's fair to say what we're talking about is what I will call an unpolitical, apolitical, or non-political process. As opposed to, because I do note, and staff very kindly included reference to, on page 24, members of the Fairview School community have submitted 20 requests for safety enhancements, 4 for Hammond Bay, etc. And so if council relies on the number of letters that, or comments that come from people, that doesn't necessarily jive with what the actual, I will call them unbiased numbers disclose is probably the best investment from a public safety perspective.
Yeah, so the tool is really intended to sort of distill it down to what we're seeing in the field. And so we completely understand that there are experiences people have that can be quite concerning and quite scary. And but we're trying to sort of filter out that numbers from experience, and sometimes they do align with each other, and sometimes we do have this conclusion that yes, in fact, there is a concern here, and yes, in fact, we do need to prioritize it. But we do try and separate those opinions from facts.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Well, thanks, Your Worship. Actually, you've made most of the points that I wanted to make and made them much better than I could. But thank you, Mr. Rose. I don't always agree with recommendations that you bring to us, but I appreciate your work and this report. I too had a second look at the Wallace Street recommendation, but based on the rationale that's been supplied, I am prepared to support it. And I think it is really important to acknowledge, as the Mayor has pointed out, that when we get input from the public, often from one area, an organized campaign, if you will, for a certain spot, it's based on real concerns, but those concerns are often presented in I'll call it a biased form without taking into account the overall picture of the city. I think it's very important that our city is working together with the school district and the RCMP to determine priorities in this area, and also that we have an unbiased rating tool that is used. Because the last thing I want to see council doing is making these decisions political decisions where we're reacting to the squeaky wheel wanting to get the grease. So I appreciate that this report is done in a very fair way and in a professional way that reflects your best opinion or your staff's best opinion on where our needs are. So I thank you for that, and I'm happy to support the recommendations.
Move the recommended motion. Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Discussion? Councillor Perino?
I just think that for the viewing public, obviously, all of us would like to see many more done. Obviously, there's need everywhere, and I appreciate that the report is so detailed, and I wish we could get them done faster. But I think we're working at the top of what we're able to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Eastmere, then Councillor Manley.
Thank you. I I just can't get to supporting the Wallace Street at Franklin Street crossing. The building on the corner there is residential, and there's like one popular business in there, but I really don't, like, I pass through this area pretty much every single day, and I don't see the case for a second crosswalk there. And we already have the one on the other side of the intersection. There's absolutely nothing on the other side of that road that people are crossing to. So if we can't identify an alternate project other than Wallace and Franklin Street at this time, it would be my preference that we move, that we proceed with the Townsite Road and the Portsmouth Road crosswalks, and maybe hold back on approving the Wallace Street and Franklin Street crossing, and maybe reserve that $100,000 to either do a different project on this list, or perhaps support something like Councillor Gesselbrecht brought up earlier with the gravel pathway, which would also benefit pedestrians and cyclists. So yeah, that's where I'm at on this. I just can't support it with the Wallace and Franklin Street crossing at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Manley?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree that there's it's important to have this tool. We hear from a lot of residents about different areas of the city, and we have a huge need for sidewalks and crosswalks across the community. I'm unsure about the Wallace Street one as well. Just you know, I walk in the area as well, and I'm not seeing the need there, but the Townsite and Portsmouth ones I see as a priority, and if staff prioritize those and maybe leave Wallace last and consider some of the other things, I do think it's really important for pedestrian safety around schools, and that we should be prioritizing some of those areas. But I'm prepared to support this as is. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons, Councillor Gesselbrock, sorry, and then Councillor Hemmons.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like the Wallace just doesn't feel as large of a priority to me, and I'd prefer to see you know, something put in around Fairview School. So we'll see if this passes, and if not, I can put forward an alternate motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons?
Your Worship, just a process piece. If we have a couple of councillors who are asking to separate, would it be wise for me to suggest an amendment whereby we approve forgive me, I didn't have this lined up. The Townsite Road and St. Patrick's Crescent, as well as the Portsmouth Road and Applecross Road.
Proposing an amendment to the current motion?
Yeah.
Do we have Ms. Ricard?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to know that no motion has been moved and seconded at this point, so no amendment is required.
Yeah.
Sorry, but Councillor Perino moved it and Councillor Thorpe
My
seconded.
apologies, thank you.
So is an amendment in order then?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, they were very quick and I didn't make a big deal about it, so, but they're satisfied, they moved and seconded, I'm satisfied.
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did, yeah, we did.
All right, so Councillor Hemmons, you're moving an amendment, please.
That's right. I move that we amend the motion on the floor to remove the Wallace and Franklin Street intersection.
And not pick an alternate?
Well, I'm sensing
Right.
something's coming from
Okay.
Councillor Gesselbrock. I'm
All right.
sensing, yeah.
And seconded Councillor Manley. Discussion on the amendment?
If I may. So I'm also a bit lukewarm on the Wallace. Ultimately, I got there because it's the foundation of our pedestrian infrastructure. But I do think there's some redundancy there, and I just wanted to give the councillors who opposed that intersection completely an opportunity to state their case. I do like the idea of infrastructure around a school, but I also agree that there's some political nature there that we might want to avoid. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe, then Councillor Eastmere.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. First of all,
Councillor Gesselbrock.
I would appreciate a ruling on whether this would be considered an appropriate amendment. To me, it's a totally new motion. It's not in line with the intent of the original motion, which was moved and seconded. However, assuming that it is in order, I will not support it for the reasons I think we've already had in this discussion. I'm not prepared to look at an alternate site which is based on political noise making, although it might be worthy in itself, but I don't think that's appropriate compared to what has been identified by our staff as a higher priority. So I'm sticking with the original recommendation, and I won't support anything that goes contrary to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vicar. Councillor Thorpe's point.
Thank you, Your Worship. So essentially, this amendment would be striking a portion of the original recommendation, and the committee is able to strike information if it wishes to do so.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Gesselbrock, your hand is down, so no further discussion on the amendment, proposed amendment, which is to delete the mention of the Wallace and Franklin.
Yeah, I support the amendment. I think it's a good way forward.
All right. All those in favor of the amendment, Councillors Eastmere, Hemmons, Manley, and Gesselbrock. Those opposed, Councillors Perino, Thorpe, and Mayor Krogh. The motion carries. So we're back to the original motion, which is leaving town site in Portsmouth on the list. Further discussion on that? Yes, the original motion has been amended to delete the reference to Wallace and Franklin. So now we have two allocations that we're voting on, unless someone proposes a further amendment. All those in favor of the current motion? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. So we have $100,000 of mad money to play with, so to speak.
Could I put forward a motion, please?
Sorry?
Oh, I was wondering if I could put forward a motion.
Yes.
I'd move that we add the Elizabeth Street at Howard Avenue to the pedestrian allocation.
Yes, and that's not on the list of recommended projects. It's on the second, I'll call it the in addition, the referred to in the report is in addition to the prioritization scoring. So Elizabeth and Howard, is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Eastmere.
Thanks. Yeah, to speak to it, you know, I think that we do have a prioritization tool, which is great, and it gives weighting based on location, you know, how it relates to our transportation plan, you know, amount of usage. There's a whole set of metrics, and ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a tool. This particular crosswalk ranks high on the tool, and I don't know, you know, the degree of preciseness that the tool provides, but it's something that can at least filter out things that people may be advocating for that don't really meet some form of objective standardization. But a tool can only take you so far, and I think that just basic common sense, you know, Howard Street is, a lot of people are always complaining about the speed along that street. We had, you know, that recently the development up there, and there's a lot of comments on that, and I think, you know, the proximity to an elementary school, it just seems like this is one that it's ranked high on our tool. There's a lot of desire to have, you know, some more safety in this area, and I think that common sense would lead to this would be a high priority item, and so I'd like to put it on the list. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've already explained my feelings on this, and I will definitely not support this, just in terms of principle. I'll point out that I worked for several years at Fairview Elementary. I'm well aware of that location. But to recommend this simply because, as I see in the notes, that there's been 20 requests from members of that community. Again, this is the squeaky wheel getting the grease, and I'm not saying it isn't deserving to be on a list, but our rating score using our city tool was 41.5, whereas the Wallace Street location was rated much higher at 48. So to me, we're talking transportation. We continue, in my opinion, to be going down a road of poor governance. And this is making something political, and it should be apolitical. It should be based on professional judgment and recommendations. So I'm not supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In order, Councillors Perino, Eastmere, and Hemmings.
Thank you, Your Worship. And further to Councillor Thorpe's comments, absolutely the Elizabeth Street at Howard needs to be done. But when our staff have a scoring system that is very clear and we bypass the next two top projects, which is the Waddington Road at Dufferin Crescent or the Mary Ellen Drive at Dover Road, both of those areas I've used a lot. The one at Mary Ellen, I mean, oh my goodness, you've got the skateboard park, and then you've got this massive field that that the kids are there for soccer. It's incredibly busy. So for me, I'm actually very surprised that we would not listen to what our staff say when they say this is a priority. That Wallace Street is going to be, when those buildings open, and this is going to take 2 years before it's built, when those buildings are open, there's going to be so many people in this area, and it's ranked at a 48 by comparison to a 41.5. It just shocks me that we would go against what our staff is recommending as the right move, and to make this a political project, it's disappointing. I won't be supporting.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. I appreciate the concerns shared, and for me it's really about, I mean, the main thing is that it's the kids who are spending most time walking, and they're most at risk, and so that's why, to me, areas around schools to me rank higher. And I don't think it's really fair to characterize it as political noise making when it's parents expressing deep concerns about the safety of their children walking to school. So that does weigh heavily on my mind when you read about the needs for safety enhancements in this area. And to just go down the list a little bit, like I don't think it's really going against staff recommendations, because it does say that it's likely that future pedestrian unallocated funding will support recommendations at these locations listed below. So we're not plucking something out of thin air. It is on the list. So for that reason, I would support this, but similarly, I would also support either the Mary Ellen Drive or Waddington Road projects. To me, they're all important. The Mary Ellen Drive one is over, it's $150,000 estimated, so that would be going over and above our current budget, but I would be happy to support it if there was desire for that one, or the Waddington Road one. But then next down the list is the Elizabeth Street and Howard Ave, and there is a lot of traffic on Howard Ave. It's a very busy area, so that's why I would support this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmings.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to support this because, so I hear the arguments about not being political. I also want to acknowledge that this is council's fund, that we get to choose where it goes. Yes, staff has a tool to assess, to help us make those decisions, but ultimately these are our decisions. If it was just going by the numbers, AI could be doing our job, and maybe AI will be doing our job soon. But we're actually here to apply discretion and to apply nuance. That said, I really hear the priorities around schools, absolutely. But there are other crosswalks with much, well, not much, but with higher scores. So I was wishy-washy on Wallace. I think there's probably better projects we can do, the Waddington Road at Dufferin Crescent. I wonder if I may ask a question about the prioritization scoring, the Elizabeth, that spreadsheet of 4. Are these the highest ranked in terms of not phase 2 but phase 3, if I can say it that way?
Sorry, through the chair, the question is the list of 4 locations on page 4 of the report?
That's right. Would they be, so if we do, say we approved the 3 today, and then we went into the next highest scoring, are these 4 kind of next on the docket, or is there also, like I'm thinking of where if we're talking about providing crosswalks around schools, that we, I just want to make sure that we're looking at a comprehensive list if we're going to make that decision, rather than just 4 that were potentially in the future that you might have identified in a.
Right. So the Waddington and Mary Ellen are sort of the next tier.
Right.
There's going to be more within that. These are ones that just had sort of public interest, and so we did include them for awareness because we have had calls about them, but there is quite likely going to be a number of locations that are in that sort of 41 to 47 point range that may be adjacent to other schools. I can't say for certain, but there's quite likely going to be more locations.
Okay, so I'm happy putting our 2 through, voting against this. What would be the process if we do not choose another project today? Would a decision point come back to us, or would we just bump 100,000 into next year's budget?
Mr. Lindsay.
Your worship, the $100,000 would remain in that account until council identified another project or priority.
So council, at any point, if this fails, this could be brought back and that 100,000 could be used this budget for a project.
It's specifically allocated for that
Great.
budget, so it'll remain there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Manley?
Thank you. Yeah, I tend to agree with Councillor Hemmons. I know there's a number of schools that have requested better crossings, and I think I'd almost want to leave it to staff to figure out which of those schools should be prioritized first. And I do think schools should be prioritized, elementary schools in particular, just because you get so many kids crossing and they take risks when they shouldn't be, and Howard is getting busier, but we have heard from Quarterway, we've heard from Departure Bay, we've heard from a number of schools, and so I'd like to almost leave it to staff to figure out what elementary school is scoring higher on the list right now. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to second the comments of Councillors Thorpe and Prino. With reference to this particular project, jumping up the queue, it's a 10% difference in the scoring system. We're taking something that's rated at 41.5 and putting it ahead of 3 projects actually. We've taken Wallace off the list. Waddington scores at 47. Mary Ellen scores at 46. I appreciate that, this is a political decision. Councillor Hemmons is quite correct in the broad sense. It is a political decision. But many of the decisions we make are not based on politics. They're based on what staff recommend because they have expertise. I'm not prepared to substitute my opinion or the opinion of concerned parents, and I've been a concerned parent and raised our kids on a very busy street, which I remind everyone has 1,600 cars a day go up and down it. So I'm not unfamiliar with the dangers of heavy traffic. But substituting my opinion for the judgment and expertise of staff, I think is, as Councillor Thorpe has suggested, it's poor governance. So I am not prepared to support moving the project at Elizabeth and Howard up the scale. Councillor Gesselbrock, one more time.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I just, I do think there are some good points made just in terms of the prioritization of the school ones. My understanding was that the next 4 items, the Elizabeth Street, 2nd Street, Hammond Bay, were the sort of the next ones down the tier from after Mary Ellen and Waddington. I did not realize that there could be substantially more in between, so I can definitely understand the sentiment of jumping the queue, since there could be other elementary schools that would be people requesting them be placed. So that does change my perspective a little bit. I'm still supportive of it, But I do think the Waddington and Mary Ellen are also two very good projects that would be helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is to add Elizabeth Street and Howard Avenue. All those in favor? Councillor Eastmere, Councillor Gesselbrock, and those opposed? Councillors Hemmons, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Brino, Councillor Manley. The motion is defeated. We have $100,000 left. We don't have to deal with it today.
I got a question, Councillor Mayor Krogh, sorry.
Question, Councillor Gesselbrock?
So would we have to increase the budget then if we added the Mary Ellen?
Yes. It's 150, not 100.
Okay. I would, if we want to go for the next one, I mean, like, I'm not in favor of slowing things down, so I would move putting the Waddington Road and Dufferin Crescent project on the docket. Somebody wants to second that.
You've moved it. Councillor Hemmons has seconded it.
Yeah, just say, you know, I think this is a site that definitely could use an upgrade, and if it's, you know, high on the list and, you know, recommendation, I think that we should move forward with it. I also think Mary Ellen Drive at Dover Road is another area that really needs some improvements, but it's a little bit out of the budget currently, and so that's why I put forward the Waddington Road at Dufferin. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prino, then Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a question through you to Mr. Rose. The reason why I was in favor of the Wallace Street, obviously, is because of the two new buildings that will be opening up. Is that the reason why that area was primarily suggested, or can you give us any other basis? Because I keep coming back. I'm very familiar with all three of the Waddington and Mary Ellen and Wallace, but for me, with Wallace, it was the two new buildings. So can you just explain the rationale of why that one was picked as part of the three?
Certainly. So through the chair. So the program or the tool that we have tries to balance both the sort of proactive and reactive prioritization. And I feel like we had a fairly similar conversation about the crossing on Applecross by the ICBC building either a year or two ago.
Yes.
And so, you know, having points and a point system for being proximate to a school, we also have them within our urban centers. And so that's where we look and go, this is where we're going to promote density, and this is where we want to promote a walkable community. And so at this immediate moment in time, the density may not be there, but in time it will be. And so whether it's the TELUS site or whether it's something up on Franklin or the old hospital site, there's going to be pedestrian generators that will receive benefit from that. And so that would have been one of the sort of guiding lights for that outcome.
Okay. It's just that, you know, with the Waddington, with the new cancer center, you know, starting construction, but with Wallace Street, we've got 2 years that before this crosswalk will be done, and it's going to be such a busy area. I'm trusting the system of how the points are generated, and if that's what staff are telling me as experts in the field, if that's what they're telling me are the most urgent places, I can't vote in favor of the Waddington.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons and Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support this. I note that the score is the same as the Applecross Road and Portsmouth Road crossing, and that staff simply recommended it based on the strong public support expressed during the recent Woodgrove area plan consultation. I would imagine if we consulted with the hospital area that we would probably receive similar feedback. So given the scoring, given that rationale, I'm happy to support this. And just one piece on the Wallace, which I'm still, you know, I feel a bit gray on, but you're right, there will be more pedestrians, and there's a crosswalk about 20 feet away. So I'm okay with that redundancy. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate this being brought forward as an alternate, and even though, yes, we do have new big residential builds coming online on Wallace, they are bookended already by crosswalks, and so they'll have the opportunity to cross the street if they want to come downtown twice at the intersection of Wallace and Franklin before getting to this, and then there is already a crosswalk there. So for that reason, I think moving to this Waddington Road project is a nice option that I will be happy to defend if anyone asks us about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do note that Portsmouth versus Waddington both have the same score. We approved Portsmouth. It's a 1-point difference between Wallace and Waddington. And candidly, in the circumstances, now that we're really sticking with what are the real priorities of staff, I'm prepared to support the Waddington. I'm familiar with all these areas. 1-point difference isn't moving me one way or the other, so I'd rather be supportive of Waddington than moving something up a full 10% in the scale. Either we believe in this scoring system or we don't. We have a motion. All those in favor on adding Waddington? Everyone except Councillor Perino. Very good. Good for you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the input of staff this morning. Living proof, as I always say, the smaller the amount of money, the more time we spend, and that's good though. Any other business? Mr. Lindsay?
Your Worship, I just wanted to follow up on that question that you had asked us earlier about the overtime in the fire department. And I don't think I answered it very well, but I just want to confirm in 2023, when council did add all of the new positions, that was certainly one of the points of rationale for adding new positions, was a reduction in overtime. What I don't know, or we don't have at our fingertips, is exactly how that's been impacted. And I would remind council, we just brought on the second cohort of 20 just earlier this year, so I'm not sure that all the data will have time to play it out, but we can certainly update you with what we've seen so far since the first group was brought on.
Thank you very much. I would appreciate it because it was a rationale for doing this, and frankly, overworked workers always present a certain risk in the workplace. It's deleterious to health, and I think that's one of the points of hiring the extra firefighters. I think I can safely say we have no questions for question period. Motion for adjournment, moved Councillor Perino, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion